In the 1980s, there was one man who towered over every other comedic actor. But today, if you mention Chevy Chase, people don't only think of his body of work. They think of angry voicemails. They think of slurs on set. They think of a bitter, old, out-of-touch man feuding with people half his age. Most people think this happened because he got old, or because Hollywood changed, or because cancel culture came for him. But the truth is deeper than that. The seeds of his downfall were planted long before Twitter, TMZ, or leaked voicemails ever existed. Today, we're going to walk through the exact moment Chevy Chase's career crashed, and the one thing that changed between 1980 and 2012 that he never saw coming, and some crazy stories most people don't know. Let's rewind to the beginning. Cornelius Crane Chase was born into privilege on October 8, 1943. And we're not talking metaphorical privilege. We're talking literal generational wealth. His mother's side of the family traced back to the Crane plumbing fortune. There were connections to the Vanderbilt lineage. He grew up in a world where confidence wasn't just encouraged, it was an expectation. Classmates at Riverdale Country School in New York described him as funny, athletic, and sharp, but also aloof, detached. The kind of guy who could make the whole room laugh, then walk away like he didn't need the applause. That combination, talent plus distance, would become his signature. After bouncing through Haverford College, Bard College where he finally graduated, and a series of odd jobs, construction worker, taxi driver, audio engineer, he landed at the National Lampoon Radio Hour in the early 1970s. This is where he refined the persona that would make him famous, the tall, handsome, sarcastic guy who seemed permanently unimpressed by everyone around him. He wasn't playing the clown. He wasn't playing the loser. He was playing the guy who was better than you and made it funny. And in 1975, that persona found the perfect stage. When Saturday Night Live premiered on October 11th, 1975, nobody knew what it was supposed to be. Sketches, improv, news parody, political satire. It was chaos, but chaos that worked. And standing at the center of that chaos was Chevy Chase. He wasn't the most talented person on that first cast. John Belushi was funnier, Dan Aykroyd was sharper, Gilda Radner was more versatile. But Chevy had one advantage nobody else had. He said his own name on TV every week.
I'm Chevy Chase.
Every Saturday night, he looked into the camera and delivered that line. While everyone else was playing characters with funny names, Chevy Chase was just, well, Chevy Chase. That repetition turned him into the show's first breakout star, the first cast member whose name you knew, the first one to get magazine covers, movie offers, and fan mail by the truckload. But behind the scenes, resentment was building. John Belushi thought Chevy acted like he was above the ensemble. Gilda Radner felt like he didn't care about the other cast members. Producer Lorne Michaels clearly favored him, which made it worse. And then, after just one season, while SNL was finding its footing, Chevy Chase quit. He left for a 3-picture deal with Universal. He left because he thought he was bigger than Saturday Night Live. And for a while, he was kind of right. On February 18th, 1978, Chevy returned to Saturday Night Live for the first time as a guest host. It had been less than 2 years since he had left. The show was now a massive hit, and Bill Murray, the guy hired to replace him, the guy everyone called the new Chevy, was now one of its stars. Chevy walked back into Studio 8H like he owned the place. According to the oral history live from New York, he immediately started bossing people around. He tried to take back his old Weekend Update desk from Jane Curtin. He was rude to the crew. Backstage, John Belushi, who'd always resented Chevy, started stirring the pot. He told Murray things Chevy had already said about the cast, things that may or may not have been true. Bill Murray, who'd known Chevy since their National Lampoon days, decided he'd had enough. Murray confronted Chevy in a hallway after dress rehearsal. The conversation escalated. Murray, knowing Chevy was going through a divorce, said, "Go F your wife, she needs it." Chevy fired back by comparing Murray's face to the surface of the moon, cratered and ugly. 5 minutes before showtime, Chevy burst into John Belushi's dressing room and challenged Murray to a fight. Murray swung, Chevy swung back, Belushi tried to get between them, and most of the punches landed on Belushi. The most memorable insult? Murray, mid-fight, pointed at Chevy and screamed, "Medium talent." They were pulled apart. Chevy went directly from the fight to the stage. The audience gave him a standing ovation. They had no idea. Lorraine Newman later said, "It was very sad and painful and awful." But here's the thing. In 1978, that fight stayed backstage. No video, no audio, no TMZ. The gatekeepers controlled the narrative, and Chevy Chase's movie career was just getting started. After the SNL fight, Chevy Chase did something almost nobody else from that original cast managed. He became a legitimate movie star. Let's look at the numbers. In 1978, he co-starred with Goldie Hawn in Foul Play, a romantic comedy thriller that pulled in over $45 million on a $5 million budget. Critics praised his charm. He proved he could carry a film. 2 years later came Caddyshack, $6 million budget, $39 million at the box office. Ty Webb became the archetype of effortlessly cool comedy. The guy who doesn't even try and still wins. Pure Chevy. That same year, he reunited with Goldie Hawn for Seems Like Old Times, another hit, over $43 million. Chevy was now a bankable romantic lead. In 1983, National Lampoon's Vacation exploded. $15 million budget, $61 million at the box office. Clark Griswold became an American archetype, the well-meaning dad whose confidence far exceeds his competence. Then came 1985, Fletch, $8 million to make, $50 million in theaters. This was peak Chevy Chase. The deadpan delivery, the physical comedy, the sarcastic quips. It was what he was born to do. And in 1989, Christmas Vacation cemented his legacy. $27 million budget, $71 million at the box office. It became a holiday staple. Still watched every single year, still generating revenue decades later. Over a decade, Chevy Chase was untouchable. But behind every one of those hits, the same pattern. On Caddyshack, he clashed with director Harold Ramis about improvisation. On Vacation, he argued with everyone about character choices. On Fletch, he refused to do scenes he thought were beneath him. And then, in 1992, came Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Director John Carpenter later said working with Chevy was a nightmare. Chevy constantly questioned his decisions. Chevy rewrote scenes. Chevy thought he knew better than everybody else. And the movie, well, it bombed. For the first time, people in Hollywood started asking, is the talent worth the trouble? Well, not too long after, they got their answer. It's 1993. Chevy Chase is 50 years old. His last few movies have flopped. Fletch Lives underperformed. Nothing But Trouble was a disaster. Memoirs of an Invisible Man tanked. But he's still Chevy Chase, and Fox, desperate to break into late-night TV, offers him a blank check. They want something edgy, something hip, something that can compete with Letterman and Leno. So Chevy creates The Chevy Chase Show. It premiered on September 7th, 1993, and it was a catastrophe of historic proportions. Fox spent millions renovating the Aquarius Theater in Hollywood. They built a brand new set. They hired a full band. They promoted it as the future of late night. But there was a problem. Chevy Chase had no idea what he was doing. He refused to do a traditional monologue because he thought it was old-fashioned. He wanted a 1950s variety hour. He wanted to sit at a piano and sing. He wanted elaborate sketches. The result? Creative confusion, tonal whiplash, and worst of all, the audience could see Chevy sweating. For the first time in his career, Chevy Chase had to be himself, live, unedited, unfiltered, for an hour every night. And it exposed the truth. The cool guy act only worked when it was scripted and edited. And the reviews were absolutely savage. Entertainment Weekly gave it an F. Critics called it a black hole. The New York Times said it was even more unfunny than his movies. Ouch. Ratings dropped 40% after the first week. Fox executives went into panic mode. Should we cancel it immediately? Can we fix it? Is there any way to salvage this? And well, the answer was no. The show lasted exactly 6 weeks, 29 episodes, then Fox canceled it and essentially buried the tapes. Colleagues said he fell into a deep depression afterward. He couldn't get out of bed. Friends were worried because for the first time in his life, the audience had seen him fail. Not fail in a movie that could be blamed on a script or the director. He failed as himself. And once you see the cool guy sweat, he's never cool again. After the talk show imploded, Chevy's career never really recovered. The offers changed, the roles shrank, Hollywood moved on. Let's walk through the decline. In 1994, Cops and Robertsons became the first movie after the disaster. It opened in second place behind Four Weddings and a Funeral, a British rom-com, in its sixth week. It finished with $11 million, 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. The New York Times' Janet Maslin wrote, "Even more unfunny than his disastrous talk show." She called it a chase vehicle with 4 flat tires. Think about that phrase. 1 year later, and critics were still using his talk show as the baseline for failure. The next year, Man of the House came out. Chevy plays a federal prosecutor trying to win over his girlfriend's son. But look at the poster. He's not the star. He's playing second fiddle to Jonathan Taylor Thomas, a 13-year-old kid from Home Improvement. He'd been essentially demoted, from Fletch to the dad in the kids movie. 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. Entertainment Weekly's Owen Gleiberman gave it a D+ and wrote, "As a performer, Chase hasn't lost his air of foggy detachment. He still delivers his lines as if he were reading them off a teleprompter mounted somewhere in the next room." In 1997 came Vegas Vacation, the fourth vacation movie. It made money, $36 million, but the reviews were just as bad. Critics said Clark Griswold felt tired. The jokes weren't landing anymore. The franchise felt exhausted. Then Snow Day in 2000, a Nickelodeon movie about kids trying to prevent school from reopening after a snowstorm. It's completely forgettable, even though my kids liked it. Anyway, but 2006, that's when it gets really, really bad. Zoom was supposed to be Sony's answer to The Incredibles and Sky High, a family superhero movie starring Tim Allen. $75 million budget, Chevy plays a supporting role as a scientist. The movie opens on August 11th, 2006, debuts at number 9 with $4.5 million opening weekend. By the time it finishes its run, $12 million worldwide, not domestically, worldwide. That's a financial catastrophe. The movie lost at least $65 million. 5% on Rotten Tomatoes, not 50, not 15, 5. At release, it briefly had a rare 0% before a couple of generous critics bumped it up. And behind the scenes, even worse, Chevy was dropped by a creative arts agency, one of the most powerful talent agencies in Hollywood. Studios quietly labeled him undirectable. He turned down roles that later became hits because he thought they were beneath him. And then, out of nowhere, came one last chance. In 2009, Dan Harmon, creator of Rick and Morty, was developing a new sitcom for NBC called Community. It was a smart, meta ensemble comedy about a community college study group. And he needed someone to play Pierce Hawthorne, an aging, out-of-touch, casually racist, arrogant millionaire who nobody likes. And Dan Harmon cast Chevy Chase. The character description? Pierce was basically Chevy, the aging boomer who doesn't understand the modern world, the guy who makes inappropriate jokes, the wealthy jerk who thinks his money makes him important. For 3 seasons, it worked. Community became a cult hit. Critics loved it. Fans obsessed over it. And Chevy was funny again, playing an exaggerated version of himself. But behind the scenes, same old pattern. He clashed with Dan Harmon constantly. He complained about the writing. He hated being the butt of the joke. He didn't understand the show's tone. Donald Glover, who played Troy, later told The New Yorker, "Chevy was always trying to throw me off. I just saw him as fighting time. A true artist has to be okay with his reign being over." And then came the breaking point. During the filming of the season 3 finale, Chevy walked off set without shooting his final scene. He was frustrated. He was tired of the show. He wanted out. At the wrap party, held at a bar in Los Angeles, Dan Harmon got drunk, and he decided to get revenge. In front of the entire cast, crew, and their families, Harmon got everyone to chant, "F you, Chevy, F you, Chevy." Well, Chevy walked in with his wife and daughter just as the chant started. Chevy left humiliated, furious. In the message, Chevy called Harmon a GD a-hole. He said Harmon's writing was getting worse and worse. He called him a fat F and said he'd probably die soon because he eats like crap. He said Community was effing mediocre sitcom. In 1980, that voicemail disappears. Harmon listens to it, maybe tells a friend, and it becomes a backstage story. But in 2012, Harmon played the voicemail at his live comedy show, Harmontown, in front of a packed audience. Someone recorded it, TMZ posted it. On April 2nd, 2012, millions of people heard Chevy Chase, the cool guy, losing his mind. The internet exploded. Headlines everywhere. Chevy Chase melts down. Chevy Chase attacks community creator. Is Chevy Chase finished? Dan Harmon later issued an apology on his blog saying, "It was a dumb, unclassy, inconsiderate move on my part. I made the horrible, childish, self-obsessed decision to play someone's voicemail to me." But the damage was done. During season 4 of Community, things got worse. There was a script involving Pierce doing a bit with a blackface hand puppet. Chevy was furious. He thought the show was making him look like a monster. And then Chevy made a massive misstep. He used the N-word while arguing about the direction of the character. The context matters. He was frustrated, asking rhetorically if they were going to make him say the slur next. He was making a point about bad writing, but he said the word out loud, on set, in front of Donald Glover and Yvette Nicole Brown. Brown got up and stormed out. Someone leaked the incident to The Hollywood Reporter. The next day, when the cast and crew returned to set, Chevy had a full meltdown, and he never came back. Chevy Chase left Community partway through season 4. He appeared briefly in one season 5 episode, and then he was gone. His last big acting job, done. And even if you think his exit was unfair and was the reason for his career ending, it's tough to know how his career would have fared beyond Community either way, because comedy had changed. In the 1970s and 80s, Chevy Chase's brand of comedy worked because it was about superiority. It was about being the smartest guy in the room. It was about punching down. But by the 2000s, audiences didn't want to watch the guy who was better than them. They wanted to watch the guy who's worse. Think about The Office. Michael Scott is a delusional idiot. We laugh because he fails. Think about Parks and Rec. Leslie Knope tries too hard. Andy Dwyer is lovable but dumb. Think about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The entire premise is watching terrible people make terrible decisions. Comedy shifted from punching down to punching up, or at least punching sideways at ourselves. Bill Murray figured it out. He reinvented himself as the lovable, mysterious weirdo. He became a meme. He crashes bachelor parties. He's self-aware. Chevy never adapted. He stayed the same guy who left SNL in '76 because he thought he was bigger than the show, except now the world had moved on. He was built for the 80s, the cool guy who didn't need to try. And for a decade, he delivered performances that we still watch today. But then he aged out of young and cool. And when he tried to prove that he could do something different, the talk show, it was oil and water. He didn't have the skill set. The audience saw him sweat, and once that happened, the cool guy was gone forever. Then came the wilderness years. 15 years of bombs, supporting roles, and studios quietly moving on. When Community gave him one last shot at relevance, his reputation finally caught up with him. All those decades of burning bridges, clashing with co-stars, walking off sets, it all came back to bite him. In the 70s, that behavior stays backstage. By 2012, it was content that we all got to see. And that's important context. Despite his bad attitude and the conflicts, he stuck around in pop culture for half a century. The headaches he created were apparently worth it, until the very end, when they finally weren't.